For most voice actors, the goal is simple: build a base of great clients who will keep coming back consistently for the long term. And there are a few different ways that that can be done. And one of those ways is through radio imaging, becoming the voice of a station who needs refreshes all throughout the year. My guest today has made imaging one of his primary genres. His clients include iHeartMedia and SiriusXM. Welcome to the show, Matt Fogarty.
Hey, Marc.
I love that on your website, you specifically mention storytelling playing a role in every aspect of your life, including bedtime.
Bedtime's a big one. What can I say? I have two young daughters, 6 and 9, so they're still very much into the bedtime stories, as am I. I get to practice some cool voices for some perhaps non-radio imaging applications. But yeah, I mean, storytelling is what we do, right? I think that when we do that in our normal lives, it just only helps to kind of support what we're doing in the booth.
Who would have ever thought that bedtime stories would become such a great practice arena for voiceover? But I mean, I feel you. I'm in the same boat with a 4-year-old who wants bedtime stories. And sometimes
Hmm.
she just wants stories just for the sake of stories during the day. She just comes out with books and we're ready to go. And I'm like, this is actually like it's something that I would have never thought of before, but it's actually really good. Like it forces you
Yep.
to think a little and maybe grab a character or two or whatever.
100%, and they have fully embraced the notion of, manipulating me by extending bedtime with, like, one more story. They're like, "Dad, do the voice that you do in this book, we can read another one." And that prolongs bedtime for, like, 10 or 15 minutes, so they're smart, these kids.
That seems to be like a universal thing that the kids have picked up on. They're communicating with each other secretly through some back channel toddler WhatsApp or something and saying, "Hey,
Totally.
by the way, if you do this, they'll bedtime will last longer." Because that is Kelly does the exact same thing.
Yeah. They know we wanna practice the voices, they're like, we can get them
Yeah.
this way."
Yeah. "It'll help you make more money, dad." "Okay, fine, I'll do it."
Yeah, let's go.
So, what made you decide of all of the various and assorted genres that are out there, what made you decide to go down the radio imaging road?
Well, I was a creative director with the Jim Pattison Broadcast Group for 14 years.
Okay.
During that time, I was doing some voiceover, like in conjunction with my role as a creative director. So I guess I was exposed to working with some really great imaging talents um, when I was working in radio. We had Joe Cipriano as the voice of our hot AC station. Matt Rawlings was the voice of our rock station. They've also now just added Ann DeWitt. These are all Atlas talent
Yep.
voices, um, and I just really loved that part of the business. Um, in my role, I was working for a cluster of stations, 6 radio stations, and we were responsible for writing all of the commercials, all of the promos, and all of the imaging for all 6 stations. So, we wrote a lot of stuff that was kind of, I don't wanna say, like, not creative or something like that, but, like, we wrote a lot of car spots that were pretty much like a retail
Yep.
spot, you know, and, what so I did a lot of that, and then when I got a chance to refresh imaging, I knew I was gonna get to send stuff to Joe or to Matt. That's where I was really like, "Okay, we can flex some creative muscles here, we can have a lot of fun." So that's kinda how I was introduced to imaging, and then, got into voiceover, like, through stuff that I was doing at the radio station, but yeah, recognized at that point that imaging, I really enjoyed writing the imaging, so you know, it goes to show that I would probably also enjoy voicing it, and I did.
Natural extension,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So, what was the first station that you booked to be the imaging voice of? Do you remember when that was?
Um, I don't know the year, it was probably around 2010. It was WAJI in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Surprisingly enough, I found that job on Voice 123, um, and I don't see a ton of imaging stuff on Voice 123, but this one was there. Reached out to the program director, put in my audition, got a call back where he walked me through some more specific stuff that they wanted to hear me do, and Yeah, signed the deal. That was my first station. Would have been, yeah, 2010-ish, I believe.
I'm guessing then that your background as the creative director and being the guy who was writing it, working with the talent, that whole entire process, that becomes part of your value proposition for voicing it. So when you're reaching out to these stations, you understand what they're looking for on a level that maybe somebody who's just doing the voiceover side wouldn't understand. So that's got to play into your favor.
Yeah, it certainly doesn't hurt. I mean, the radio industry has always been a very fast-paced, busy, industry with people wearing lots of hats. I think in this day and age, program directors are looking after multiple signals. They're probably hosting the afternoon show. They're probably
Yeah,
also, having a fair say in most of the imaging stuff. Like some of them are producing it on top of writing it. So I think anything that you as the talent can do to make that person's day a little easier, flow a little more
yep,
smoothly is a good thing. So having an understanding of what they need um, is huge. I mean, I think of it as providing work parts. Like, I mean, you might get a promo and you always want to voice everything that's on the page so that your bases are covered. They have everything that they have asked you to provide. But something that I like to try to do is, find sections or find little pieces that aren't on the page that might be an excellent addition because I've written the stuff, oh, this would be a great, here's a little opportunity for a funny ad lib that you could pop in there, something like that. Um, Doing that without them having to ask for that is huge because they just get it and they can choose to use it in the piece or not. Sometimes the ad libs don't make it in for
yep,
whatever reason, timing or whatever.
sure.
But um, yeah, you just want to be the easiest part of their day, basically.
I feel like there is an opportunity there over some of the other genres to be a little bit more creative, particularly if you have that side in you. I mean, I was a PD once upon a time at a
Hmm.
station, and I would write imaging and send imaging out. And same thing every once in a while. Sam Cooke was the voice of my station. Every once in a while, she'd give me something, and I was like, "Why didn't I even think about that?" Or sometimes when you're writing it, you hear it in your head a certain way, and then she would send back a read that was, like, just totally, completely opposite end of the spectrum of what I heard in my head, but I was like, "Oh, I like that even more," and so it's nice to be able to have a voice who understands that and is able to deliver that, so there is a little bit of creative flexibility that comes into this on the talent side then.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Like I said, like always deliver what they send you because
Yeah,
you want to make sure that they get exactly what they need and they may not have time to always listen to all the multiple takes. They hear it the first time like, "Yep, that's good." That happens too, but to provide value to your clients, if you can give them some extras, I mean, that's always welcome and they may not even like you said, they may not have even thought of it that way, but at least now they have the option to play with the promo a little bit. And the golden nuggets in radio imaging, in my opinion, is the stuff that's not on the page. It's the
yeah.
stuff that's off the cuff that you find that you can put in that brings personality. Your job as the talent and the branding voice for a station is to understand that station, understand who the listeners are, and then tailor your performance to kind of like speak to that audience. So you need to do a little bit of research obviously, but a targeted ad lib that's like perfect for the demo, that's the good stuff.
So you're not just doing one pass. Like if they just send you a page of scripts, you're not just doing a single pass on every one of those and being done with it. You're coming at some of them from a couple different angles, or like you said, throwing in the ad libs or something like that.
Well, Friday at 4 o'clock, it's one pass. No, I'm just kidding.
That's right. It depends entirely on when it's delivered and what else I've got going on. But
Yeah, for sure. No, no, I always try to give more than just one pass. Obviously, I want to give a couple of different inflections, a couple varying degrees of energy. I mean, it's usually pretty apparent based on the copy. Like, okay, this is a high energy promo where they're giving away, a flyaway trip somewhere for a concert. That's going to be more, higher energy. A branding piece might be a little bit more comedic. Some sweepers, music sweepers, there's varying degrees of energy you're gonna put there, but you get to know, um, what the PD is looking for. It doesn't take very long, but, like, a great thing to do when you sign a new station is jump on the phone with the PD or a Zoom call or
Yeah.
whatever. Just have that initial conversation. It saves everybody time in the long run, like, "Okay, so what are you hearing here?" They'll have some great feedback
Get a
for you.
clear understanding of their expectations and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I try to touch base with those PDs every couple of months just to make sure we're still on track, everything's cool. So yeah, communication. We're in the communication business.
Something tells me, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but something tells me that probably the smaller the station that you're working for, the more open and willing they are to any extra creative help they can get. Those tend to be the guys that are doing or ladies that are doing, 6 different things within the station, and imaging is just like, I got to get it done, but probably not a whole lot of thought and effort into it to the level of larger groups where there might be like some places have dedicated imaging producers. That's the only thing that they do. They've got a lot more time to kind of work their way through it. Do you see that, or is it just across the board universal? Just give them your creative side too.
I mean, I think you're probably correct when we're thinking about a smaller station, the PD probably has more hats. And yeah, some of the larger markets definitely do have dedicated imaging producers still, or they're working with a company like Mix Group or Benstown or something like that to handle the production. Um, so sometimes you're also working with that third party, and they're the ones sending out the copy and doing the production. So you get to know those people too, which is great. Um, but I mean, from the talent perspective, I think that it's important to treat your smallest market station the same way you would treat your largest market station, in that you're giving them all the same stuff that you would either way. So, they may not, in the smaller market situation, they may not always have time to use all of those ad libs, but they know they're there. And I think
Yep.
they appreciate that.
Yep.
Um, they definitely appreciate that extra effort from their talent because, and coming from radio, I think it's like I sympathize. I know how
Yes.
busy these people can
Yeah,
get.
anybody that's
And
been there and knows, you understand very, very intimately what that process can look like.
even if they don't use the stuff that time, they get sort of used to knowing, like, the level of, what to expect from you, and knowing
Yep.
it's there when they can use it.
Yeah, for sure. Now, you mentioned Benstown, for example. A lot of people are familiar with Benstown,
Mhm,
very popular place for imaging to come from. You mentioned your stations when you were working as a creative director, you had several talent that were from Atlas.
mhm.
Talk to me about where the work is coming from for you. Are you is it are these stations coming from your agents? Are they coming from your marketing? You mentioned Voice 123. Is it Benstown? Is it a combination of all of these things? Where are you finding?
Yeah, it's a combination of all those things. I mean, the Voice 123 one that I found for my first station way back when, that's, I think, in the minority. I very rarely see radio imaging auditions on Voice 123, although every once in a while there is one that pops up. Um, so it's a combination. I mean, a lot of the opportunity comes from my agents and managers. So I'm with Atlas Talent and Haas Management Group. So, they're certainly sending out auditions. Direct marketing can really work well in radio imaging. There's all the information you need to direct market to a radio station can be fairly easily found online. Takes a little bit of research, as
Yep.
all direct marketing should. But when I started out, I didn't have I didn't have Atlas talent.
Yep.
I was a guy from Nanaimo, BC, working in radio, wanting to kind of like pave a pathway for my future, and I literally went on Wikipedia and I typed in, and I said this at my panel at VO Atlanta, the imaging panel. I just typed in list of radio stations in New York State, list of radio stations in California, list of radio stations in Ontario. And I went through and I just was very systematic about it. I printed off lists of all these stations. I went to the website. I found out who the program director was, or the creative services director, or the imaging director if they had an imaging director. Um, and I found these people and I sent them my demo and I crossed my fingers, and at the beginning, that's how I got, several of my early stations was from direct marketing. And I mean, I still directed those stations through my reps when I had them, of course, but before I had reps, I was doing all that kind of groundwork myself.
So, just to clarify, you're saying now all of your stations are going through your representation, even if it's one that you happen to land on your own, or are you actively trying to land any on your own anymore at this point, or are you just going
Oh
through
yeah, I'm
agents?
actively trying to land them on my own, but like I still like so I would do the marketing outreach,
Okay.
get them interested hopefully, and then I would bring in my
And
agents
onto
to
onto a
negotiate the
system.
deal
Okay.
and get the
Okay.
paperwork and all that kind of stuff.
So do you know how many stations you're doing right now?
Um 29, I think.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
Do you have a
that
limit? Have you ever
y
thought about, or do you think about, like, I can only handle this many stations, or, based on workload, or is it just, no, I'll just find another hour in the day and figure it out?
well, I haven't hit that limit, whatever it may be
Whatever the
yet.
limit is yet has not been discovered.
That's also the nice thing about radio imaging is it's retainer based, so you get, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages a month, whatever whatever the agreement is.
Yep.
So you don't get stuff every day from your stations. They may send you some stations may send you a big chunk of their page allotment all at once. Like, "Oh,
Yep.
we have to refresh all these music sweeps, so here's like 3 pages of stuff." And like, well, that's what you get for the month, right? So once that is done, you're not going to hear from them till next month. Some stations may send you little bits and pieces as they need, but for the most part, they're still pretty good about staying within the copy limits that's agreed on. So you have certainly days that are very busy, but you might
Yep.
have a day where you don't get anything or just a couple little things, right? So it's manageable when you look at it that way because yeah, sure, you're going to have a heavy day every once in a while, and at the end of the day, your voice will be a little fried, and you'll need to go to bed an extra hour early. But um, some days are like pretty chill.
Are there situations that you run into, and I'm guessing this would probably be maybe larger market stations, but are there situations or circumstances where, larger market station, large morning show or something, you are doing stuff more often, or they do come to you with like last minute, or can you add this, or is it primarily just like a, or send you stuff at the end of the month type thing or whatever, like different
Yeah,
from affiliate in that way?
I get a little bit of both. Like, I mean, it's radio imaging is one of the cool things too is it can be very topical, right? So if one of the examples is if a core artist on a rock station or a classic rock station um, passes away,
Yep.
you know, there's a reaction period where all the rock stations want to run some sort of tribute
Yep.
piece, to that artist because it's topical. It's what everybody in the rock world is talking about. If Tom Petty passes away, right?
Yep.
When that happened, um, we were scrambling, and so this is an example that I use. This was Matt Rawlings was our voice, another Atlas guy. Um, I sent him just a couple of things, and obviously he was plugged into that world and knew what had happened, and we got stuff back like I think in like 30 minutes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, um, y if you're working in radio imaging every day, you're in the booth. So when something urgent, topical, pressing, time sensitive comes in, you're able to react. You'll just shuffle your day a little bit, right?
Yep.
Um, and I think we do that regardless of the genre of VO. If like something urgent with a deadline, need this in an hour, like you're gonna bump that up in your list of things to do, and
Yeah.
your marketing emails or whatever else is gonna kind of slide down in the day a bit or move to tomorrow or whatever. But um, yeah, I think you need to be able to react. So there's definitely the urgent stuff, and there's the stuff that is a little bit more flexible too.
What's the strangest place you've ever had to record when something like that has happened and you weren't at
Oh
home
man.
in the booth conveniently? Have you ever had any
Hmm.
impromptu, backseat of the car studio sessions or something like that?
Yeah, I've definitely recorded in the car, which, in a pinch is, like, surprisingly not a bad little mobile booth.
I mean, they're pretty
Um,
much built to be soundproof, right? So,
yeah, they're great, so I've definitely done that. If I'm traveling anywhere for more than a couple of days, I have a tri booth, so I bring that with me, which is great, but Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky. Where I live, I'm I'm never more than, like, 20 minutes from my studio usually, so, I've definitely been, like, going somewhere, checked the email on my phone, and just
Yep.
turned right back around and gone
Yep.
back to the studio. That happens more because I'd rather record in my booth behind me here, but,
Sure.
um, yeah, I mean, in a pinch, in the backseat of the car, that's probably the most. I can't think of any others. I don't think. I mean, I recorded, like, at people's houses, like, trying to find a comforter and some pillows in the corner of a room, but, I think everybody's done that one.
Is there an expectation, and, obviously these extreme examples aside, rock legend passes away or something,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
is there an expectation for turnaround? Is it, get it back to me by tomorrow? Is it get it back to me today? Is it get it back to me next week? Under a normal, here's your monthly list of imaging.
Yeah, I would say, like, as a general rule of thumb, 24 hours is probably pretty standard. Um, I try to beat that. When I'm in the studio, it's not uncommon that I would return something, like, in an hour, ish. So that's kinda what I aim for, but, it all depends too, like, if you're booked in a commercial session that might be, like, 4 hours long, obviously,
Yep.
sometimes those things need to wait a little bit because you're actively involved in doing another project, but, I shoot for, like, 1 to 2 hours as a general rule, but I think that in terms of an expectation from the station, I think if you're consistently 24, even 48 hours on the high end, I think that that's, within the realm of, like, what is reasonable expectation-wise.
You mentioned earlier program directors, creative directors. There might even possibly be somebody who's responsible for imaging if it's a larger group of stations or whatever.
Mhm.
Those are the primary job titles that you're marketing to. Is there anybody else that we should be thinking about of who, if we, I mean, you're always going to find a program director, but are there instances where, okay, they've got a program director, but they also have this title, maybe that one would make more sense?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, program director, usually in the smaller markets, the program directors, still have, the power to make those
Yep.
decisions in a lot of cases. Um, I think there is a shift though where some station groups are, they may have a regional director of programming.
Mhm.
They may have, like, just like an overarching director of programming that sort of has more of the power to make those decisions, where the local PD, will have some input, but um, maybe doesn't have, like, all the authority to change voices and stuff like that. So, yeah, anything with programming in the title usually. Consultants too, station
Yeah.
groups are working with consultants, and consultants often have relationships and, many years of historical experience working with talent that they really like for certain formats. So, if you can sort of be on those people's radars as well, that's a good thing. Um, but yeah, program directors, regional director of programming, senior vice president of programming, director of programming, all of
So
those
pretty
are
much
good.
anything with programming in the
Pretty
title is.
much. Yeah, yeah.
On the flip side of that, is there anything that is a red flag for you? So if you're looking at stations as you're going through, is there anything that you use to vet, like, oh, you know what, this station's probably not going to be worth reaching out to, or I don't want to reach out to this station for XYZ or whatever? Is there anything that is a red flag, or is it just if you got a broadcast license, I'm going to send you a marketing email?
Um, for me, one red flag, it's just kind of a non-starter for me. Some stations will, ask if you're willing to do, like, a one-off deal, like, "Hey, we're gonna do a refresh, we only need, like, 1 or 2 pages, and, like, we're just gonna pay you, like, a per page rate without a retainer model built in." And that's typically a no from me because, um, if I voice 2 pages of imaging for XYZ station in whatever market it is, and there's nothing to limit that usage, I've effectively taken myself out of the running for any future work in that market.
Yeah, good
Um,
point.
so, like, the competition down the street is never gonna hire me if my voice is running on a station in the same market. So, the way an imaging deal should be structured is, for a year, this is the retainer, this is what you're gonna get every month, this is how many pages, and then when that deal comes up, you can renegotiate, or, maybe they learned that, "Oh, um, we thought we only needed 1 page a month. We're actually using closer to 3 pages a month." So then you have some flexibility to go to them and say, like, "I'd love to give you 3 pages a month. Here's what that would look like." But, it's also if they terminate the deal, which does happen,
Yep.
um, they need to pull your voice off. They can no longer use it. So then, if you're no longer voicing, in Huntsville, Alabama, then you're free to approach other stations in that market and say, "Hey, I'm now available here." So yeah, red flag is like you never want to do something that's going to potentially limit your opportunities down the road for like a quick, easy payday. And they'll be like, "Oh, it's just 1 page." Like, yeah, that's really not the point though. It's the fact that you could run the stuff
Takes you out
that's
of the
on that
market.
1 page for like 10 years and then
Yep.
I'm hooped.
That brings up another interesting point then. What kind of system do you have in place for managing as far as you said, you got 29 stations. I think about Cliff Zellman with his automotive map, put a pin in the map in the cities where you're voicing. Do you have a system that you use to keep straight all the different markets that you're in so you know where not to market to?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, many of the stations that I'm on, have been great clients and I've been there for a long time. So I sort of just know, but I
Right.
do definitely have a list that I can go back and reference if I have a senior moment or whatever. But yeah, and also like in my CRM, I think you and I have talked about CRMs before. Like I use Close, so I enter every station as a project in my CRM, and all of my contacts that are in my CRM. If it's a market that I'm not available in, I just put the do not contact section as conflict market. So if they pop up, it's like, it's time to reach out to Mark Scott. I'm like, no, Mark Scott's in Dallas, Texas. I'm not available in Dallas, Texas. Sorry, Mark.
Yep.
But so yeah, so a combination of like a spreadsheet with an itemized list, but I also have that data replicated in my CRM as well.
Has the internet changed the dynamics of this at all now that every station's streaming online, or is it still just based on this is the city that they're broadcasting in, so this is where the conflict is, as long as it's not anything outside of that city?
From what I've seen, any exclusivity is limited to the broadcast area of the station based on the traditional parameters of where that signal goes.
So that's actually something to take into consideration too, right? It's not specifically then just the city, it's also what's the reach of the signal, right? Because some of these places signal reaches into more than one town, more than one city or
Yep,
whatever. You get a monster FM signal with a huge reach or whatever. So you've got to take that into consideration for where you're reaching out as well.
absolutely, and, like, that's where the expertise, from a Nate Zeitz or a Haas really comes in because they're well versed in that, type of negotiation, right? Like, you may need to, um you may need to bump that exclusivity clause a little further out for
Yep.
certain groups
Yep.
or whatever, but, that's where they're really gonna be able to, because historically they can look at past deals and, like, where, what has been sort of, the norm before in those markets, and so that's a huge asset, but, yeah, I mean, that is part of the negotiation that goes into a radio imaging deal is, like, where are you held exclusive for this station?
You mentioned doing the retainer thing and that you want to get into a situation where you're doing a retainer. You don't want to do the one offs, which when you explain it the way you explained it makes total sense. Talk about rates then. Is this like, are we looking at GVAA? Does it have a category for that? Is it based on market size or reach of the station, or what are the factors that we need to be thinking about on the rate side?
Yeah, I would say the main factor is market size, and then, you know, number of pages obviously is gonna have an impact, so, like, 1 page in a small market is gonna be, maybe 250 bucks a month. 5 pages in a large market is gonna be much more than that.
Right.
So those are the parameters, but again, like, I think that, you know, it's really helpful in imaging to have a rep or somebody that you can talk to about these rates because they have sort of the historical information of what is, typical for that market and that group because smaller groups don't have as large budgets, like, they
Yep.
may need to negotiate a little bit harder on rate,
Yep.
even if it is like a larger market or, a medium-sized market. So, yeah, I mean, market size, pages, but ownership group does play into it too. So, I mean, that's why I typically like I may have some feelings about what I would like the rate to be, but um,
As we all do.
yeah. um, but all of my rates are vetted through my imaging reps.
How has consolidation changed imaging? How has it changed the landscape over the last 10 years? Because you've got, I mean, in Canada, it feels like there's like three groups that own 80% of the stations. And then they get, we'll have our jocks on the West Coast do the stuff on the East Coast and vice versa. Has it limited opportunities at all?
I mean, generally speaking, I think that there are probably fewer opportunities than there were before. I think budget constraints in today's advertising climate, advertisers just have so many places to spread their budgets. So, traditional radio I think is still getting like a decent share of the ad dollars, but not as much as they once were. So, I think stations are looking for ways with voice tracking and, perhaps doing some imaging in-house versus outsourcing to a talent. That's definitely happening, yep, but, there's still lots of good opportunities out there. Like you mentioned station groups, so, like, I'm the voice of, My FM, which I'm sure you're familiar with,
Yep.
group of stations in Ontario, the company's My Broadcasting Corporation. They're still buying stations. They just picked up a couple of the Bell stations when Bell sold off the latest 4, and so now
How ironic is that, by the way, that the stations that or the groups that seem to be doing the best right now are the groups who are buying the small local stations and running them as small local stations, which is how it always used to work before the big guys came in, bought them all, thought they could fix it, actually ended up
100%.
breaking it.
It's because those smaller stations and I am only speaking from my experience, but because they are embracing the pillars that make radio
Yep,
as good as it can be. I still believe in the medium. I still
yep.
believe in local DJs, local, local, local. So those companies are still buying stations and they're running them the way that they should be run and the way they were intended to be run, hyper local. If you're driving down the road and there's a huge back lineup of cars and you're like, what's going on here? If you turn on your local radio station, the next time that DJ comes on, they better be saying, "Hey, big accident on Highway 19. If you're headed south, you might
Yep.
wanna think about" that's the power of radio. One example, there's lots, but, the more a station can invest themselves in the fabric of the community where they're operating, I mean, you're making yourself valuable to the listener who lives in that community. That's where the power is. So, the companies that are still doing that, I think are will still be successful for the foreseeable future, and, I love working with those groups because I mean, my FM keeps me very busy. They refresh their imaging constantly,
Yep.
because it's so local and they've got local sponsors. These smaller groups do a great job of bringing in local businesses as well, and they all support each other. So it's really fantastic and still a super cool medium to be involved in when it's done right.
It got to a point when I left radio, it got to a point where it honestly felt like you could turn on just about any station in Southern Ontario at 7 o'clock at night, and you were either gonna hear John Tesh or what was the other one? It was a lady that did a show. I can't remember what her name was, but it was
Delilah, maybe.
Delilah, yes.
Yeah.
But, like, every station was broadcasting the same thing, and then they wonder why nobody listens anymore. Well, because everybody's broadcasting the same thing. So, something that you just said, which is really interesting because I think our instinct, if we're marketing for imaging, would be go to the bigger stations first, go to the bigger markets first. But in reality, it sounds like it might actually be a smarter play looking for the smaller groups running the smaller stations in the smaller markets who are doing it like My FM, which I have a My FM station in my town. So that
Mhm,
makes
mhm.
what you're saying makes total sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, you wanna go after the potential clients, sorry, that, are going to hire an imaging voice, and yeah, I mean, a lot of those smaller groups, they do, and you develop really strong relationships with those program directors. Like my FM, I've been the voice for many, many years. They're great to work with, and you sort of get to know these people, and like one of their biggest cheerleaders when I see
Yep.
that, like, oh, my broadcasting will acquire Brockville. I'm like, sweet. These
Yep.
these they're still charging forward and they're still successful. Like they're a very successful group. So it's nice to see that.
I love that. So, as a dad with a couple of daughters,
Hmm.
how many cool points did you get when you got the Taylor Swift station on SiriusXM? Did that get you
That
like
was
legendary status?
That was, like, epic legendary status for sure, and it just so happens, like, so my older daughter is 9, so she is, like, full on Tay-Tay,
Full blown. Yeah.
full blown. So, yes, I definitely notched a few extra, cool dad points at that point, and that was, like, I'll tell you a little aside for that, like, that was such a cool project to be a part of. Obviously Taylor Swift, biggest artist in the world, um, and the talking about turnaround that we were mentioned earlier, that audition landed in my inbox at something like 4 a.m. Pacific time, and I just so happened to be awake. Why, you may ask? Because my oldest had a bad dream and called out, and so I was up. I
Yep.
went, like, tucked her back in, got her settled again, like, "Oh, I'll check my email." "Hmm, Taylor Swift? Okay." So I went right to the booth at 4 a.m. I had, like, the audition back to them, by 5 or something like that, and, that was just, like, this strange twist of fate that I happened to see it, because I was up because of Taylor Swift's biggest fan, my daughter. But, yeah, that was a really cool project to be a part of. That was a pop-up station, so, Sirius does these pop-up stations,
Yep.
every once in a while, artist-centric, which is really cool, and then they do a lot of great imaging where they bring in, little anecdotes from fans and like, what you'd call a listener drop, but, like, really artist-centric. So I think that's really cool. I'm also the voice of Mosaic on SiriusXM as well, which is kind of more of, sort of an AC, hot AC mix of, the best of, like, the '90s and early 2000s, which is cool too.
Kaylee said to me yesterday, actually, we were getting in the truck and she said, "Daddy, can we go to a Taylor Swift concert?" Now, at this point, I had no idea that she knew who Taylor Swift was, right? So that first of all, I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute. How do you know who Taylor Swift was?" But my response was, "We can, but we would have to sell our house and live in the truck. How do you feel about that?"
Probably like, "Let's go."
Yeah, that's basically what she said. So I was like, "Okay, well that didn't work, but so yes, so apparently I am now entering or starting to enter the Taylor Swift zone as well, which is so crazy because her older sisters only listen to country music, so I don't know where the Taylor Swift thing came from, but I was like, "Oh my gosh, no, don't ask me to have to take you to a Taylor Swift concert."
If I had been smart, I would have tried to finagle a couple of tickets to the Eras Tour as part of that deal, but,
I was gonna say, like, did you get invited to a football game or hanging out with her and Travis or
sadly, no, but that's on my list for next time. If the Taylor Swift pop-up channel ever comes back, I'll be
that's
asking.
that's what we're going for.
Yeah, yeah.
So how are you feeling right now? And I think we touched on this a little bit, but how are you feeling about imaging as a genre with the shifts that have happened in the industry? And in particular, there was a couple of stations last year that, went 24/7 AI, and some of them it was just like I think it was a gimmick thing, right? Like they're just showing AI. Some of them I think have probably started using it more. So that threat is potentially real. But
Mhm.
as someone who's in the thick of it right now, so many stations that you're currently doing, are you feeling optimistic? Are you feeling wait and see? Are you just status quo? Where are you at?
Overall, I still feel very good. I think that, of course, AI is gonna disrupt a little bit, especially, as people become more aware of its capabilities. But like in any business, if you have a strong product, you're providing value to your clients, and if you have great relationships with the people that you're working with, um, it's gonna be very hard to be replaced. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that it becomes even more important to go the extra mile in terms of providing all those human additions that AI cannot do, like the ad libs, interpreting the stuff between the lines of the copy that's not on the page and giving
Right.
those, being just generally nice to work with, um, communication, being a creative partner. When I sign on with a new station, like, I champion that station, like, I learn everything I can about them. I follow their social pages. I comment on their wins. Um, I wanna be involved in that station because it's my voice and my personality that's helping to drive that station forward from a branding perspective. So it makes total sense that I would wanna, champion their cause and
Yeah.
and be a good partner. So I think all of those things become more important. Um, will AI, impact some people and will it replace some people? Probably. I'm very grateful that I haven't had a situation where, um, that's happened to me yet. Not to say that it won't down the road, who knows? But all that I can control and all that I focus on is being the best creative partner I can be,
Yeah.
providing the best product that I can every day, and you know, hopefully that value is received with open arms, and that's enough because, it is an option and budgets are shrinking to some degree.
Part of what you touched on there was just, you're talking about the ability to read between the lines of what is this promo saying, or what is this sweeper saying, or where, what's the message you're trying to deliver, which comes back to the ability to be a good voice actor,
Mhm.
right? It matters even in radio imaging. It's not just in
Absolutely.
commercial or whatever. So I know you're someone who is constantly working on honing the craft, and classes, workshops, working with coaches and stuff like that. Who are some of the more impactful coaches that you've worked with in this genre, or workshops that you've taken? Who do you recommend?
Yeah, so specific to radio imaging, there's not very many people that I'm aware of that are coaching just that genre, but I will say this, um, most there's overlap, okay? So
Sure.
most of the skills that you're going to work on, even in commercial or promo, especially with promo coaches, will be applicable to radio imaging. Going back to what we said at the beginning, storytelling, it's all storytelling. So, I mean, to answer your question, the coach that I think has had the most impact on my process is Tina Morosco. Um, She's fantastic, and she is a great balance of, like, because all coaches have a different style. Some are very much like, "Here are the steps that you should take, like, try this, this, and this," you know? And some
Yeah.
are more, like, theoretical and philosophical in how you approach and who are you and all this kinda stuff. And there's great value in both of those types of approaches. For me, Tina, has a good balance of those 2, where, like, she'll give you some actionable things that you can try right now, but also, like, the backstory and some of
Yeah.
the, underlying stuff. Um, so that's not radio imaging, but all of the things that she's teaching, um, certainly have a place and can be applied to, I think, any genre of voiceover, including radio imaging. So, um, and then promo too, um, I've worked a lot with Dave Walsh. I've worked with Jeff Howell. I've worked with Harry Dunn in promo, and like I've worked with Donovan Cornitz. All these guys have a lot of value to add to the conversation. Um, and, the through line, I think, is just like with promo and by extension to radio imaging, you wanna make these people excited to listen to what they're listening to or watching the show
Yep.
that they're it's you wanna be there with them. You wanna be, kinda like that cheerleader again. You wanna get people amped up, like, "This is a cool thing, check it out." So, all of that stuff from promo works really well in radio imaging, and the storytelling aspect that you'd maybe more predominantly find in commercial, I think there's still room for that in imaging, and it should be baked in.
Right on. What's the, bucket list station?
Z100. Yeah, I don't know, man, like, so there's still so many great stations. I would love, like, a huge, station in New York or LA, obviously. Right now, I'm on KDMX in Dallas. That was a really big get for me. Fantastic station. Great team there. Their morning show is just so funny. Billy the Kid in the Morning. Shout out. Love working with those guys. But, I mean, I'm open to all opportunities. Let's be honest. I'm happy to work with the small little stations. I'm happy to work with the large market stations. To me, like I said earlier, I try to treat all those stations the same in terms of like what I'm providing to them. So yeah, I'm always open, but yeah, like the big markets are nice, of course,
It would
but
be nice,
yeah.
yes. I mean, you did have Taylor Swift, so, I mean, is there anywhere to go beyond that at this point? I don't
That
know,
that
but
one felt pretty big. I don't know. If there was a Green Day station, like probably one of my favorite bands is Green Day, then I would definitely be wanting to do that. My wife and I went to go see their Saviors tour in Seattle, and man, Billy Joe Armstrong, I don't know how he does it. Like he's got to be 50-ish, probably even a couple years older than that, but he still plays with the same energy that he did like in the Dookie era, which was 94. So like I mean, props to that guy. I hope I have that much energy when I'm 55 or whatever.
we can well, so I say the same thing. I'm like, "I hope I do," because had 2 kids a little later than I expected, and so I'm gonna
Yeah, yeah.
need to have that energy still when
Yeah,
I
you still have to like crawl around on your hands and knees for a few more years.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, this has been fantastic. I feel like you just delivered an hour-long masterclass on radio imaging. So, you
Thank you.
say that there's not anybody out there that's specifically teaching it. I think you just did. So, you can take the claim to
Hmm.
that title right now. There might be something there because this was fantastic. So much good information. And I admit that I was a disillusioned radio guy when my last radio job came to an end. I just the direction the industry was going, consolidation. Um, Everybody was downsized. There was hardly anybody left in the building now. It's like 5 people running, entire clusters of stations, and they were all programmed by consultants, and I was just like, I just lost the passion for that thing that was the only thing that I had dreamed about from the time that I was a kid.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
listening to the way you talk about a group like My FM, for example, and it's taking me back. My very first station, small local station, live 24/7. Like, when did that ever
That's
happen, right?
awesome. Yep.
But that was its value proposition. And so it makes me excited to think that there's still, there's groups that are out there that get it and are bringing some of that back because that was the whole thing that made radio great in the beginning anyway, before we thought we should just put everybody together and have John Tesh on every radio station. Nothing against John Tesh's show. We all listen to it at some point, but
Yeah, 100%. I mean, like we said, when it's done right, it's such a powerful medium.
yep. Yep.
So and there are still groups. My FM is one example, but they're not the only ones. Like there's a
Yep.
lot of groups out there that are doing it well. Um, and so I think, while there's some consolidation happening, absolutely there is, but I think there's still great potential for the medium as a whole. And then by extension, I think there's lots of opportunity for voice actors who want to do radio imaging.
I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing some of the nuggets that you've learned over the years. And here's to one of those big city New York or LA stations for you.
I'll
I mean,
let
you
you know
got
when that
Taylor Swift on
happens.
your resume now. You should be able to leverage that. Can you get her to give you a reference or?
Yeah, I'm gonna email her right now.
All right,
Thanks so
man.
much for
Thank you
having
so
me, Mark.
much.
Yeah, thank you.